My dear brothers and sisters, the times in which we live in today are testing times. They are challenging times, especially for Muslims living in this part of the world. And although deviation from Islam comes in many different shapes and forms, the deviation of today that is prevalent is different than the deviation of the Arabs and of Quraysh of the past. And so the deviation, or we can say the paganism and the kufr of Jahiliyyah, was one of idolatry. They were attached to their idols. As for the deviation and the paganism of today, the kufr of today, it is one of ideologies. Not to say that there are not people who are worshipping idols in today's age, but most people today are afflicted with all forms and different kinds of ideologies that are based upon kufr. And so, in today's world, and especially in this part of the world, we hear of so many different ideologies, of liberalism, of feminism, of humanism, of atheism, and all other kinds of isms. And although most of these ideologies are easily recognizable as being in contradictory to the very basic principles of Islam, and so your average Muslim recognizes that atheism is different than Islam, or other such ideologies, they are clearly against the very basic fundamentals of Islam. However, there is one ideology that becomes blurred in the lines. And so there is one ideology that many Muslims do not pick up. They don't realize the danger of it. They don't realize how it goes against the very basic principles of Islam. And so you find many Muslims today embracing this ideology. And this ideology is liberalism. To put it in a few words, we can say that philosophical liberalism is the idea that the only true universal way to good and to happiness is by the pursuit and achievement of liberty, of freedom. And that true universal evil is by the deprivation of that liberty and that freedom. Once we understand this, once we fully comprehend this, we can see how the ideology of liberalism has impacted the lives of many Muslims, especially living in this part of the world. We find that more and more Muslims are embracing Western liberal ideas and concepts, despite the fact that these concepts and these ideologies run contradictory to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us with. And so the lines become blurred for many reasons. But among the most common reasons is that many Muslims see general commonalities between this form of liberalism and Islam. And so they hear of slogans of freedom, of equality, of justice, and they say Islam comes with the same thing. Islam believes in freedom. Islam tells us of equality and of justice, not realizing that there is a huge difference between what they mean and what Islam means by these concepts. And so, due to their ignorance, many Muslims, they embrace this form of liberalism due to their ignorance either of what Islam teaches or their ignorance of what liberalism entails. And what further complicates it is the fact that many Muslims have migrated to this part of the world, fleeing from the tyranny and the injustices of Muslim countries. And so these countries welcome them with open arms. And so they feel that they should accept the ideologies that these people promote. And so there's no doubt that living among a people, you will be affected by the way they think, and you will be affected by what they promote, the values that they promote. You will be affected by it, and you'll start to accept it one way or other. And so although we do not deny the fact that these Western countries have done a lot of good towards Muslims, we should realize that there is a balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to strike between, on the one hand, holding on to our beliefs, and on the other hand, dealing with people in a good way and with justice. The only way forward is by educating ourselves. By educating ourselves and our families of the truth that Islam has brought, and opening our eyes to the realities of these ideologies and what they're based upon. And so if we were to think about it, Islam was sent as a complete way of life to control freedoms, so that they do not break loose. On the other hand, liberalism, it wants to break those freedoms loose so that there is no control over them. If we were to think about it, liberalism has separated the Muslim from Islam. And so it starts with promoting one to fulfill his desires. Then it moves on to kufr. And then after that it moves on to atheism. This is what we have seen in the past with the Christians who confronted the church in Europe. And so gradually, as they broke away from the church, it led them to accept these ideologies, until finally it led them to the rejection of a creator for this universe. And if we were to think about it, Islam has defined the various categories of people. On the one hand, you have a Muslim and a believer. On the other hand, you have a kafir, you have a mushrik, and you have a munafiq. These are terms clearly laid out in the Quran and clearly seen in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. While liberalism, it promotes equality between all of these various categories, so that there is no distinction between these various people. And if we were to think about it, Islam came to refer judgment to Allah alone and to His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whereas liberalism, it wants us to break that wall down of referring judgment to Allah and His Messenger, and accept what is haram as being halal, and vice versa. And so, as long as the people want to live a certain way, then we have to accept that. And we should believe that they have the right to live however they want, even if we ourselves don't involve ourselves in that way of life. And so if the Khawarij, on the one hand, expelled Muslims from the circle of Islam, then what the liberals have done is that they have completely erased that circle. And so for them, there is no such circle. There is no difference between the Muslim and the kafir.